Hey folks, I'm sure if you've been following the news, you know that there's a trial going on in Minnesota. A former police officer is being tried for the murder of George Floyd. I've not been watching it. I'm old enough that I remember another big trial. I remember the trial of those police officers who were tried for beating Rodney King in LA. I remember watching the news, I remember watching the clips, I remember thinking, why, how could this possibly be justified? And then I remember them being acquitted. So I think part of me, I just don't have the heart to watch this trial in Minnesota. But a friend of mine in Quebec, friend of the channel, he sent me a message. And he talked about how his heart was breaking. He talked about how his heart was breaking because of what he was hearing from the witnesses, and that made me curious. I was curious what he was talking about. I was curious what the witnesses were saying, not how they viewed the scene and what it was that they saw that day, but what it was they were saying about themselves, that my buddy, that his heart would be broken. The cashier at the convenience store that Mr. Floyd had gone into before being arrested, where he allegedly passed a fake $20 bill. The convenience store worker said that any fake bills would come out of his salary. That if he accepted a 20, the owner, the management, was going to take 20 out of his salary. And so he ended up calling the police on this particular situation because he didn't want to lose the money. And he said, looking back, I never would have called the police if I'd known this is what was going to happen. I happily would have paid the $20. A teenager who took the video that so many of us are familiar with. Here's what they said. It's been nights I've stayed up apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. Some media agencies are reporting that these witnesses are exhibiting signs of survivor's guilt. I don't know them. I've never sat with them. I think it'd be wrong for me to diagnose them with survivor's guilt, but these words certainly do lend themselves to that diagnosis. On this channel, you and I often talk about how there's so much for us to do. There's so much for us to do in the world to make this world a better place. There's so much work for us to be involved in. There's so many things that we need to get our hands on. There's lots going on. And we need to be ready to do that work. We need to be ready to do the work that we are called to do. But one thing that I'm thinking about after reading these witness testimonies is that we also have to be aware that we can't do it all. I had a professor when I was in seminary accused me of wearing an S on my chest. He accused me of thinking that I was Superman. And in truth, he was probably dead on. I often do take on more than I can and more than I should. And it's something I'm trying to learn, something that I'm trying to figure out. But it is a good lesson for all of us to figure out when and where we are called to act. For a teenager, watching a man being choked out, watching a man's life being taken from him by a person that we're supposed to trust, a person that we are told our entire life to trust, what are they supposed to do in that moment? And yet, looking back, they feel perfectly helpless and they feel like they should have been able to do something. We need to be aware of what we can. We need to be aware of what we can do. We need to be aware of what we should do. We need to be aware of what we're called to do not just in terms of mission, but in terms of the moment. These people, they weren't called to act any differently. That's hindsight. That's a regret. They're carrying a regret forward into this world. Sometimes we'll make mistakes and sometimes we won't do enough. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. It's part of what we're all going to experience. And we'll look back on our lives, we'll look back in those moments and we'll say, oh, I should have. I could have just done that. If I had thought of it, I would have done something different. But these words, could and would and should, those are parental words. Those are judgmental words. They're all about us judging the past, and we can't change the past. Our job is to learn from it. Our job is to look back on it, learn from it, and let it go. Take the lessons with us as we move forward. Maybe we weren't as courageous as we could have been. Next time, we'll be more courageous. Maybe we could have gone deeper. Next time, we will go a little deeper. Maybe we could have stood up and stood out. Next time, we will. Maybe we could have physically intervened. Next time, maybe we will. We can't change the past, no matter how much we think about it, no matter how much we regret it, no matter how much we're desperate to see those memories in a different light. We just can't. We can learn from them. We can reframe them. We can see them as a moment in time where we learned a valuable lesson. And then we can apply that lesson to other events as they unfold in our lives. We are called to do a lot. And there are going to be times when we will be Johnny on the spot. We will jump right in. And there'll be other times where we'll hesitate. And there'll be other times when we won't move. Let's learn from those moments. Let's carry those lessons forward. But let's leave those moments where they belong, in the past. It doesn't matter how much time we spend on them. It doesn't matter how much time we lament them. It doesn't matter how many times we rerun them through our brains. Those moments don't change. But if we allow them, those moments can help us to grow. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that for those moments that continually come back to you, those moments where you say, I could have, I should have, I would have, I pray you'll glean from them the lessons that matter most, that you'll take those lessons into the rest of your life, but you'll leave those memories where they belong, in the past. Amen.